Good Gut Live of the year.
To the last Good Gut Live of the year. Yes, my name is James Marin. I'm an integrative registered dietitian, environmental nutritionist.
I'm Dahlia Marin, integrative gut health dietitian, certified gastrointestinal nutritionist, and one of the co-founders of Married to Health, which is an integrative practice of registered dietitian.
Should probably give a rundown. If you're not familiar with our Good Gut Lives, we just talk about good gut topics, everything related to gut health. We run Married to Health, which is not just what you maybe if you're watching this on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you're seeing this, but we are a dietetics private practice. We practice integrative dietetics, which is really using food and lifestyle and nutrition to help with your chronic ailments. Today, we're getting into histamines. So it's all about histamine intolerance. Maybe you don't know what that is, but if you're having chronic postnasal drip and headaches, bloating and gas and diarrhea, constipation, so many more symptoms, and you're like, what the heck is going on? We need to talk about histamines, right?
We need to.
And it is, we were saying, 'tis the season of histamines, right? So winter is a big environmental histamine, also nutritional histamines. You're probably eating more foods with more histamines in it as well. So you're just getting bombarded by histamines. And if your body, we're going to say histamines a lot, by the way, if your body's not handling histamines well, you're going to feel it. And chances are you are.
And you might not know that you are. I
Right.
feel like when people hear the word histamine, they think, oh, those seasonal allergies people get. I don't have a runny nose. I don't get itchy eyes. I don't really have a histamine problem. But we're going to dive into all the different ways that histamines can manifest in the body. You might not realize that some of maybe your most bothersome symptoms are actually histamine symptoms and how much they can affect the gut. Because not a lot of people talk about that. I feel like in the last few years, we've really started to hear more about histamines in the gut. But your gut is one of the largest receptacles for histamines. So there are a lot of GI symptoms that you might not realize. Oh, that loose stool that I've been having for decades or years, that was maybe a histamine symptom, or the gas, the bloating, it's not getting better with a low FODMAP diet, or avoiding dairy or onions and garlic like my gastroenterologist and my dietitian were recommending. And we'll talk about it maybe being histamines.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just some housekeeping. If you're watching this on Instagram, this is the first time we're kind of doing this restream on Instagram. So if it looks a little weird, we'll fix it next time. Just let us know in the comments below. If you're watching this later, comment down below with any questions you have. We're happy to answer them. But if you're watching this now and you're live, you can also comment below with any questions you have, and we're happy to answer them. Again, we are talking about histamines, but it really encompasses quite a bit, as you'll see, and we're going to get into a lot. So I think starting off, unless you have a certain particular point to start off with, but starting off, really getting into the season. So it's winter time, no matter if you're here in SoCal with us, or we were recently in Mexico where it's still 90 degrees. But it's winter time no matter where you are, even though it may seem a little bit different. But for those of you that are in the colder, cloudier, wetter areas of the world, you're going to experience more histamine. So there's more usually particulate matter in the environment. This gets into a word called the exposome. So we do like to use scientific words here on Good Gut Live, so you become familiar with them. The exposome is everything in the environment, everything our body is exposed to, especially in regards to our gut microbiome. So the particulate matter is coming from the lack of sun. Because there's a lack of sun, there's not as many green, beautiful plants absorbing a lot of the carbon and particulate matter in the air. What that means to you is likely you're breathing in more of that particulate matter, what's called PM 2.5 and histamine. So on top of you breathing in more of that histamine and that particulate matter, you're likely also eating foods that are causing stress in the gut lining. Who ate sugar this time of year? Who's drinking sugar? Who's
around triggering people?
Who's around triggering family members or friends, or those crazy uncles, or who's flying? So lots of stressors can then aggravate histamine in your body. So really, histamine is in us, on us, all around us, in our food. And I also want to just then segue into this by saying histamines are good. We're not here to say histamines are bad. Just because you have a histamine intolerance, that's not to say avoid all histamines. Histamines are bad, etc. So
they are. And, just to clarify, you're like, you keep saying this word. What does it mean? So histamines are an immune modulated protein. So they're basically a type of protein building block that's created by the immune system. When your immune system is activated, it usually will release histamine. So we mentioned a couple of the things that could cause that activation and the release of histamines, but we'll dive into some of the other ones because I feel like so many of them people don't realize. And they're like, why do I have symptoms every time I fly? Why do I have symptoms every time I eat certain foods? So histamines are, again, these immune chemicals. They're produced by something called your mast cells, which are active in your bloodstream and in the smooth muscle. So your gut is a place that has a lot of smooth muscle, as do many other organs in the body. And when there is somewhat of an irritant to them or just a trigger, an alert to them, they will release histamine and tryptase and interleukin and some of these other immune chemicals. So takeaway, histamine is an immune chemical. And like James said, it's a good thing a lot of the times because a histamine release is part of what is involved in anaphylaxis when somebody's consuming something they're heavily allergic to. Part of what causes either the throat closing up, the vomiting, the flushing, those red alerts that your body does not want you to eat, that is histamine. And again, some of its other buddies that I mentioned. So it's a good thing in general because it's letting you know you're going overboard. You're doing something to your body that it's having a hard time handling. So, whenever the body is giving those signals, we always want to lean in and listen in, but we also want to note them because if you are having these symptoms and you're like, no one can explain these things to me, keep track of them because hopefully then you connect with the right person who can decipher and can interpret these signals your body is sending you. I'm still switching back from Spanish to English to all the languages.
Vacation mode. Hopefully you guys' holiday, Christmas, everything, New Year's going great. And now you're ready to learn about histamines and get back into it.
Enough of the break. But we do have these mast cells all throughout the body. And when they are released, you do have these receptors for histamine in the body. We actually have 4 different types of histamine receptors: H1, 2, 3, and 4. Really technical names, right? So basically, it's histamine receptor 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you see, they're all around the body, but especially in areas that are heavily responsible for function, really important areas of the body, like around your brain and your nervous system, because you want to know if something bad is happening there, around your respiratory apparatus, like your lungs, your nose, your throat. You have some histamine receptors around your circulatory system and your heart. Like I said, all of them are in the gut, and then on the skin as well. So common histamine symptoms like you all see here are brain fog, fatigue, headache, dizziness, migraines. So women tend to get migraines or headaches that week before their menstrual cycle begins. Well, guess what a histamine liberator is? Estrogen. And it is at its peak, it is at its highest that week before your period. So if around your time of ovulation, the week before your period, you're like, I don't know why I keep getting headaches, histamine. But if you get these regular headaches, this dizziness, or maybe it's seasonal for you when things are blooming or they're falling, that could be histamine. Again, I feel like most people think of the respiratory symptoms. So they think of that runny nose, that nasal congestion, that sneezing, the shortness of breath. They might not notice, but maybe they're having a high heart rate. Some people have low heart rate. Some people will collapse from histamine. And then GI wise, these are so non-specific, it might be hard to decipher that these are causing your gut symptoms. But again, if you've teased out the other things, it's not FODMAPs, it's not food allergies, it's not celiac disease. I don't have inflammatory bowel disease, but I still have bloating, gas. I still have early satiety where I take a few bites and then I'm full. I have diarrhea, pain. I'm constipated, nausea, I'm vomiting. Some of those things can be histamine symptoms. And then again, your skin can tell you. I feel like a lot of people also are familiar with those rashes and bumps that happen on the skin. Maybe it's flushing that will happen, or hives or eczema. All of those can be histamine mediated responses because, again, your body is trying to help.
So it sounds like everything, like histamines literally affect almost everything in your body. Histamines, a great analogy, I think, because it can kind of be, okay, where are we going with this? What does this mean for me? A great analogy is like gasoline in your car, right? We want gasoline in our car, unless you drive an electric car, you don't want gasoline in your car. But for those that are like most of us, still driving hybrid or gasoline cars, you're using gasoline for that combustion, that fire, that inflammation, let's say, in the car to propel and help us do things. We've seen some cars like big trucks, or if you're going on a long journey, or if you're off-roading, you put extra canisters of gasoline on your truck. You can think of this gasoline as like histamines. We're going to be using it. A lot of the cars are using it, and you can store extra. Well, what happens if you store too much? What happens if you put canisters in the front and on top and covering some of the windows, and you're putting gasoline in the driver's seat, in the back seat, and you're just going overboard with the histamine, with the gasoline, right? Now, if you were to get into a car accident, you're at way more risk, right? The car accident being that flight, that annoying family member who causes stress in your body,
Because anytime you release adrenaline,
right?
whether it's from stress from a person, whether it's from an intense workout, whether it's from flying, whether it's from feeling stressed about something, you will release histamine
You're
along with it.
you're releasing that histamine. So now, but when your body's having trouble either breaking down histamine, which we'll get into, and things like that, there's a lot of issues there. But just this analogy, imagine you're just adding this gasoline, and it can cause a lot of issues. It can also be things like mold exposure, again, going into the environment, right? Mold, susceptible areas, susceptible people, just causing more of this histamine to build up, right? Your body, we can get into like genetic factors as well as other medications, common medications. You're on high blood pressure medication. You're on anti-inflammatory medication. You're on opiates, right? Which a lot of people were on and still are on. So a lot of factors that can cause you. You're just building up this gasoline, and then oops, a little fender bender, or oh, I'm lighting something, or there's a little spark, and boom, there's a combustion, right? An over exaggeration of this histamine in the body. And this is kind of like a precursor. This is kind of a precursor like autoimmune, getting into the immune system, getting into that mast cell activation, and so forth. So you see this progression of really when your gut is off balance, when you have gut issues and dysbiosis, leading to histamine problems, leading to a lot of other problems. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for watching this. We hope you know by now Married to Health really does everything we do coming from a need in our community, a need from our patients, a need from being dietitians for over a decade, from running our own private practice. And we continued that when we formulated Gut Nurture. So if you didn't know, Dahlia Marin, RDN, LD, CGN formulated Gut Nurture along with Complement. We truly believe it is a great complement for your gut health journey. Why is that? Well, it's low histamine, it's low FODMAP, it's organic, even the package is compostable. We really designed it with the patient in mind that is wanting to eat more plants, that needs to eat more plants, but is struggling to eat more plants. This is that bridge. We also designed it for the person who's just like, I want to boost my gut, I want to feel really good, I want to help with the structure, function, and population of the gut. This is unlike anything that's really out there in that as it's focused on being a prebiotic, not really a probiotic. So the idea here, you can think of Gut Nurture as compost for your gut ecosystem. It's not trying to force seeds and the probiotics in, it's trying to create a beautiful environment and a beautiful foundation. So any seeds you get from the fermented foods you're eating, from your environment, from the beautiful habits you're building, whether you're working with us or not, they are going to fall on this beautiful, healthy soil with this beautiful, healthy compost and create a lush, beautiful ecosystem and garden, creating an abundance of fruit and postbiotics that are going to keep you healthy and thriving. So click down below, learn more about Gut Nurture, and we'll continue with the episode.
And so, when you do have these different exposures, maybe you are taking these medications, like James said, things that will affect places where histamines can get in. So maybe it is you take non-steroidal anti-inflammatories very regularly, Advil, aspirin, Aleve, Midol. Those things are known to cause leakiness in the layer, the intestinal layer, the lining of the intestine. So that's going to allow more histamine to come in. Also, things that will lead to leaky gut are things like saturated fat in coconut oil or palm oil, high fat meat, high fat dairy. If you're eating, other high fat meats like bacon and sausage, large consumption of those things will cause more histamine to come into the body. And then, things that are very high in yeast, especially if you do already have a yeast overgrowth in the body. So, if you
Mhm.
already have overabundance of yeast or fungal spores, and then you're consuming more, again, like James said, it's kind of overfilling that gas tank and going to lead to that combustion. So, maybe that is leading to some of your symptoms. If you all have any questions, make sure you let us know here in the chat. But hopefully, some of this is resonating with you, and hopefully, you're saying, okay, I'm going to look a little bit more deeply into this because I feel like this is something that maybe is affecting me. And you all would be surprised. We've said this before. Studies show that a low FODMAP diet helps 50 to 80% of people, but you might fall into that 20 to 50% of people it's not helping. And it could
Mhm.
be because histamines are really what are behind your symptoms. So, one thing we do in our practice is we kind of just have our patients keep note of those symptoms. Are you
Mhm.
experiencing these things? How frequently? Do you notice them after any triggering events like a hard workout, especially if it's endurance training, or maybe it's one of those really hard CrossFit workouts? Maybe after you feel very stressed and anxious in a work meeting, or you eat high histamine foods. So we give our patients a list of low, medium, high, and very high histamine foods. So that way they can note their symptoms, kind of keep an eye on it, and see if it is, in fact, histamines that are behind their symptoms. And if it is, yes, a low histamine diet temporarily can help. But just like any elimination diet, it's not a long term thing. These elimination diets are ones that should be followed for no more than 4 to 6 weeks in the elimination period. And in that time, you should be figuring out with your care team what else you could be doing because there's so
Mhm.
much else that can help you with either making less histamine, and that's known as stabilizing your mast cells to make it, breaking down the histamine, blocking the histamine from being absorbed. So you really should be in that time getting tested. There's many different tests your care team can run. I feel like this is kind of a newer concept. So
Mhm.
oftentimes when I have my patients ask their care team to run these tests, they're often like, what are these tests and why is she asking for them? Or sometimes I'll say, it's my first time ordering this. So I didn't know you could order N-methylhistamine in the urine. But you can ask for things like checking your urine for histamine. They can do a 24-hour collection of histamine where you're collecting your urine for a 24-hour period. You can check tryptase and prostaglandin in your urine. They can check histamine in the blood as well, and they can also check tryptase. Somewhat more invasive testing involves biopsying. So you can ask for biopsies in these areas where histamine can accumulate more. So that could be in the bladder. Sometimes my patients with irritable bladder or interstitial cystitis end up getting a cystoscopy, a biopsy in their bladder, and they are found to have a higher number of those mast cells in the bladder. Or you can have a bone marrow biopsy. They can do a skin biopsy, or they can even biopsy the luminal GI tract. So they can actually biopsy your GI tract and see,
Mhm.
do you have more mast cells there? Is that what's behind some of these symptoms?
And if you made it this far into the video, just know there's hope. If you
Hmm.
feel lost, if you feel like, I don't know what's wrong with me, many times we have a lot of patients who come to us going, I feel like I'm
Hmm.
eating everything right, I'm doing
Yes.
everything right. Like, what the heck is going on? I'm still having gut issues, whether you're plant based or not. And like, whatever program you're following, I'm doing it 110%, and I still have these symptoms. Histamines are usually something a lot of our patients are not aware of, and
Yes.
basically everything Dahlia mentioned and more. This is still pretty surface level, and there's still a lot more to go through, and that's why we definitely recommend you work with an integrative registered dietitian who knows about histamines.
Hmm.
Very, very important. But if you're feeling lost, histamines are usually a great kind of factor, a great piece of the puzzle to look further into. And that's why we wanted to really speak on this
Hmm.
topic. Very, very important.
Ask your dietitian, ask your gastro, and ask an allergist. I will say
Mhm.
allergists and rheumatologists are very well versed in histamine.
Yes.
So those could be two great providers that you're either consulting with if they're already on your care team or adding to your care team.
Right.
So they can help you biopsy or test for some of these different things and help you with kind of managing some of the things. Because, like I was saying, yes, elimination diet can be helpful. And it is one of my favorite tools to use. And there are also so many other tools.
Mhm.
Um, one of the tools that I like to use first and foremost is ensuring that someone does not have a nutrient deficiency, because we do know there are certain nutrients that are responsible for helping you make that enzyme. One of the enzymes, the main enzymes that breaks down DAO. So, in this analogy that James is giving of these gas tanks, certain things will fill the tanks, which we mentioned. There are certain things that can cover up the tank so it doesn't get full too much. Once it's full, you cover it off and it's not going to fill anymore. There are also things that can kind of open up a spigot on the bucket. And think of these enzymes as that spigot. They can help to empty out the tank so it doesn't overflow and cause damage. So, one of these enzymes is called DAO. Another one is called HNMT. And you do need specific nutrients that can help you make these different enzymes. We make some endogenously on our own inside of our own body. You're going to make some naturally in the lining of your small intestine. You can make some in the liver, the kidneys, and the brain, because those are where you can have histamine symptoms as well. But we do know that if there's damage in those areas, maybe you have leaky gut. So that area is a little bit damaged. That might not be the best place for you to be making some of these things then. Or it's possible that you have non alcoholic fatty liver disease or steatosis or cirrhosis. Your liver is hardened. You're not going to be able to make these enzymes as well there if that's happening. So you do need other ways to be able to make these enzymes. So our body will take certain nutrients to help make these enzymes. And then genetically, we can also have mutations that prevent that. But you want to make sure that you're consuming sufficient amounts of these, or that your levels aren't low of things like iron, B12, B6, copper, vitamin C, zinc. So important that those are in line. And it's really funny because once I point that out, my patients will tell me, I'll ask them. A lot of my patients have low iron because it's absorbed in the gut. So most of my patients have low iron. And a lot of them will tell me, oh, yeah, the years that I've had really low iron, I have really bad allergies. You need iron to make DAO. So if you're low in iron, you're low in that enzyme to break down histamine, you have worse histamine symptoms. So that's one of my first things to check. Are you deficient in any of those things? Let's replete it. If so, let's get you eating them. Let's get you supplementing with them. So that's one thing that can really, really help. And then there are other things that can, again, outside of those nutrients, help you upregulate production of those enzymes. One of my other favorites is certain foods that are rich in DAO. And guess what? It's beans. So if you're over here trying to cut out beans because they bother your stomach, you actually might be counterproductive, because beans are really rich in that DAO enzyme.
It's actually another reason, if you're struggling with beans, you want to figure out what's going on so you can
Don't just avoid
reincorporate
them.
beans, because there's going to be, I mean, this is one of many benefits of beans, right? So you want to figure out what's going on instead of, yeah, just masking, avoiding, running away. If you guys have watched any of our past videos, we're all about facing problems head on and understanding, not just running away. So some of the beans in that legume category would be pea shoots. A lot of these are sprouted. So shout out to sprouting as well, because it's going to unlock even more nutrients, one of them being DAO. So
Enzymes.
pea shoots, lentil sprouts, and fava sprouts are some of the best sources of DAO. Some of our favorites are so tasty. You can throw them on toast. You can put them in a sandwich. You can throw them on a salad. You can even just throw them in your smoothie and blend them up if you're not a fan of just crunching on them and eating them. So there's so many ways to eat these sprouts and eat the beans. And again, sprouting the beans, or any legume really, which you can sprout pretty much any legume, is wonderful. Untold and unfathomable amounts of nutrients in these foods. So yet another reason to eat your beans.
Eat your beans. And if you maybe are saying, I can't eat those beans.
Right.
I can't tolerate the fermentable starch in them just yet. They really bother my stomach. You can take them in a capsule form. This is one that we often will recommend to our patients. It's called Nature DAO.
We're not affiliated.
We're not affiliated. You can buy this on Amazon. It's I think, a European company. So Amazon's the only place in the US that really sells this. But this is made out of those legumes, but there's none of the starch in there. So if you're having trouble eating the beans or eating the sprouts, you can take these tablets. And this is 1 million histamine degrading units in each tablet. So Pretty cool. This is a really great tool that I recommend to a lot of my
And
patients.
if you guys do want to find everything we're recommending, we try to make it as easy as possible. If you go to marytalk.com, hit our shop page, you'll find a link to our Amazon store where you'll find things like this and others. So we try to make it easy so you're not just searching. There's also some fakes out there on Amazon, so you want to make
Yeah.
sure you're clicking
Getting
the
it
right
from the
store,
seller.
getting it from the seller. So we link that for you.
Yes.
marytalk.com shop page.
So that's one tool. You can actually just take the enzymes. This one I think is one of the only vegan ones on the market. Most of the other ones actually use pig kidney and pig liver to give you the DAO enzyme. So this one is completely vegan. So pretty cool. But this is one of the resources. Again, it's a spigot in that tank to help it kind of empty so it's not overflowing. Other things that can help kind of almost cover up or close off the tank and put a lid on the tank are histamine receptor blockers. So we showed you in that picture, which we can pop up again, that throughout the body, you have these histamine receptors. And you can actually kind of block some of them off. The analogy I give to my patients is it's almost like putting the wrong key in a lock. You will occupy the lock, but you won't open the door with that key. So you can't also put the right key in at the same time because it's already occupied. So these medications can actually block that kind of receptor or that lock. So you can't absorb more histamine and it's not active. So very common medications over the counter. Always ask your care team though. Never take any of this stuff without asking your care team, even the supplements. But you can use things like Claritin or Zyrtec. Those are H1 receptor blockers. So histamine receptor 1 blockers, which is why people take them for allergies. And they have benefits in the gut as well, because as you saw in that picture, you do have histamine receptor 1 in the gut. And then there are certain medications that are actually more made for reflux, because that's also a histamine symptom. You have things like Pepcid, which is an H2 receptor blocker. So again, those things kind of close off the tank, so more histamine can't be put in. So you can always ask your care team, are any of those different things appropriate for me? Maybe they have suggested famotidine to you in the past, and you're like, I don't want to take that. It's very different than proton pump inhibitor, something like omeprazole, pantoprazole. It's not working in the same way. Those turn off the acid pumps that make acid. These block the histamine receptor. So if histamine is what's causing your reflux, some of these different tools might be helpful. All right. And then other things are just medications as well. So again, we get it. We're pretty crunchy. We don't take medication very readily. But if you're having life-altering histamine symptoms, and maybe you don't just have histamine intolerance where you just don't break it down very well and you have symptoms, but you have mast cell activation syndrome where your mast cells are overactive and you have a lot of mast cells. So they're life-altering symptoms. I have patients who are on disability because of their mast cell activation syndrome and other diseases. So maybe you want to add a medication and ask your care team about things like cromolyn sodium. So that is a mast cell stabilizer. It's almost like it's turning off the hose that's pumping the gas into the tanks. You also have things like Xolair and ketotifen. So you can ask your care team if you feel like any of these medications might be useful for you.
Again, when you're having histamine issues, all hope is not lost. Many, many times you can rebalance. You want to get the gut microbiome and your body in eubiosis, in homeostasis, balance things out. Your microbes will help you. Again, you can also structure your gut microbiome in a way where you're having more microbes that produce histamines themselves. So you're creating more histamines in your gut. You're maybe eating more histamines. You're around stressful situations where the adrenaline is flowing and you're can be bedridden. Like Dahlia mentioned, we do have a lot of patients who, not a lot, we do have some patients who have those issues and it can be extremely severe. So
yeah, life altering. So if
life
that's
altering.
you want to get to the bottom of it. There are
Yes.
certain bacteria in the gut that liberate and produce histamine on their own. Things like Klebsiella pneumoniae, Morganella. You have things like Citrobacter, Proteus. So you want to make sure you don't have an overabundance of some of these bacteria. We all have some of them, but if you have too much of them, you might be having that overproduction of histamine symptoms. And again, if you can't break down the histamine, Other bacteria could just be a histamine liberator. Some very common helpful bacteria like lactobacillus, actually, many strains of lactobacillus are histamine liberators. So you also don't want to just take any willy-nilly probiotic if you're suspicious you have histamine issues, because they could be worsening your symptoms. So there are certain histamine appropriate probiotics that are on the market that I will recommend to my patients. There's a couple that I really like out there, and they have strains of bacteria in them that actually break down histamine. So they'll help reduce some of the histamine symptoms. So you want to, again, ask your care team, which is the best probiotic for me? And if your care team looks at you like, well, I don't know, then you're not with the right care team if you have histamine symptoms. You want to make sure they know what they're talking about. And hopefully they're suggesting other things too, other mast cell stabilizers as well. Like maybe they're suggesting things like Tulsi or holy basil tea. We're huge fans of this. Again, we're not affiliated with this company at all. We like this brand Organic India because it's organic tea and they use paper bags. But they make a lot of different flavors of histamine or of, holy basil or Tulsi. They're one and the same. So if you see Tulsi, it's holy basil. See holy basil, it's Tulsi. But they have different flavors.
The thing.
Yeah. Or makeup influencers. But they have different flavors: raspberry, peach, immune. Peppermint is one of my favorite because that helps with bloat too. They have a ginger, lemon ginger, which can help with reflux and nausea. But Tulsi is a great mast cell stabilizer. You can use things like stinging nettles, quercetin, bromelain, vitamin C. So hopefully your care team can guide you in that.
Thank you so much for watching this video. We know you're probably getting quite a bit from it. It can be a lot of information, can be overwhelming, and we totally get that. Dahlia was there not too long ago suffering with IBS and SIBO-like symptoms. She was hunched over very often, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, skin issues, hormonal issues, the list goes on and on. So we know this. We've been in practice now as registered dietitians for over a decade, and we created our Good Gut SIBO IBS program for you. If you're experiencing IBS, SIBO symptoms, IMO, SIFO, the list goes on and on. If you're like, I'm not really sure what this is, click down below. We have a free assessment for you, and that'll likely lead you to our Good Gut SIBO IBS program, which is chock full of information we wish we had. It's information that we're giving to our patients, so it's all at your fingertips in one package. It's 7+ hours of video. It is dozens and dozens of handouts. It's tailored meal plans and recipes to truly help you get to the root, to truly help you understand what's going on so you can truly heal with each meal. Check it out down below. Yeah, so again, we're all about facing your symptoms head on. Hopefully in the new year coming up, you're ready to do that. Hopefully you are sick of these symptoms. You're sick of kind of being run around. I can't tell you how many messages we get of, look, I've been working with a dietitian for 5 years or 3 years or 2 years, and I'm not getting anywhere. My care team doesn't really know. And I bring up some of the things you mentioned on your lives or your videos or on Instagram. Then we want you to know that there is hope. There are some really great methods. There are some really great tools in the toolbox out there to help just kind of rebalance your gut microbiome. So, a lot of times you can rebalance, you can rebuild, you can repopulate your gut microbiome. And we are all about helping you do that, helping you face your symptoms head on and not run from them, or not just mask them constantly throughout your life. That's not going to work. That is going to prolong a massive avalanche. Again, it's like, hanging onto too much gasoline. It's like moving all your clutter in your home into just one closet, and eventually that closet is going to explode. So we would rather help you tidy up your home on a daily basis so you have a clean and beautiful home. And again, this analogy is for your body. You have to, yes, take action every day, but it's much better than just avoiding it every day until one day, 10, 20, or 30 years down the road, you then have this massive avalanche of symptoms. So we thank you for joining this Good Gut Live. We're so glad you're here, and we'd love to answer your questions. If you're not watching this live, again, you can put your comments down below, ask any questions on this topic.
Let's answer some questions, because I feel like this is such a big topic.
Yeah.
If you're saying, I'm sick of having gut issues and next year is my year, again, ask your questions here. We do have some questions that were asked in our Good Gut membership group and some other groups as well. Someone's asking, do histamines affect the gut? Because that is where my issues have been.
Yes,
Absolutely.
most
So, like
definitely.
we said, you have all four histamine receptors in the gut. Food goes into your gut. And so, if you're eating lots of high histamine foods and you're not able to break it down very well, maybe you eat lots of yeast in things like bread, nutritional yeast, yeast extract, and spices. Maybe you eat a lot of soy. You're eating a lot of canned beans because the beans themselves are not high in histamine, but anything canned and aged and fermented is. Maybe you drink a lot of fermented alcohol. Maybe you're having lots of foods that have been aged or fermented, like dried fruits, seaweed,
Cheeses.
cheeses. Maybe you eat a lot of foods that have a lot of small seeds because the seeds produce histamine. You eat a lot of strawberries or eggplant, tomatoes, green beans. Maybe you are eating a lot of foods that ripen very quickly and very aggressively, like mushrooms and spinach and arugula, things that you're like, oh, I was going to eat that, but it's a goopy mess now. Those are all pretty high in histamine. So, if yes, you're eating a lot of histamine and you're not breaking it down very well for various reasons, you might want to look into that. And again, trial a low histamine diet and then maybe just start trialing some of these other things, the teas. Ask your care team if any of those other things can help you. And if you're like, wow, I'm a lot less bloated. I'm not nauseous anymore. I have solid stool again after not having solid stool for a really long time. That's very telling. So, it tells you, yes, histamines are helping. All right. Someone's also asking, and this is something I've seen a lot, especially in the last 3 years that we've been in this pandemic or we went through that pandemic. Um, if COVID is associated with histamines. And yes, viruses absolutely can be associated with histamine. Again, it is a chemical that your immune system produces. So when your immune system is triggered and overactive because it's either fighting a virus, a bacteria, or something else, fungal infection, histamines are absolutely going to be released. So sometimes my patients start having the histamine symptoms when they are sick with whatever, the flu, COVID, a bacterial infection. And sometimes that pushes them over the edge. And again, that creates a larger number of mast cells. And then they have mast cell activation syndrome that lingers for months or years after that initial trigger, that initial virus. So sometimes we are seeing that, and we have seen a lot more of that in the last 3 years. Definitely. I really, really do believe that histamines are the reason why a lot of people had COVID associated GI symptoms without even realizing it. So people suddenly said, I had diarrhea overnight that I never had before in my life. I had nausea. I had vomiting. I started having headaches, all histamine symptoms. So again, you want to identify what were those initial triggers? What were those initiating events for some of my different symptoms? But absolutely, those can very much come along when you are sick.
Wonderful. Yes. So, big topic. Again, we are just scratching the surface on this topic. There are many, many factors to this. So, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any further questions. You can comment down below. You can learn more at marriedhealth.com. If you want to reach out, ask us again more in depth questions. We do get lots of messages from people like, hey, help me. I've been dealing with XYZ symptoms for so long. I don't know what else to do. I'm about to give up. We literally
Mhm.
just got that message today. So
Mm.
again, you're reaching out to the right place. Let us know how we can help. We have 6 registered dietitians on the team who are integrative and ready to help and serve our patient population, as well as others, including metabolic syndrome like diabetes and high cholesterol, high
Which
triglycerides,
can affect histamines
which can
because if
affect
it's
histamines.
affecting your endocrine system, it's likely affecting your liver and your pancreas.
Yes. So,
Cancer, you can have
yes.
histamine symptoms. We do have an oncology dietitian. We have an emotional release dietitian.
Mhm.
Again, the two go hand in hand: emotion, stress, anxiety, and histamine. There are two of us GI dietitians, myself and
Mhm.
Rachel. And this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, again, because I'm not that type of person who's just like, oh, I can't help you. Let's go find someone else. I'm always that really curious. I always tell my patients, I'm the nosiest provider you will ever have. So I've really taken it upon myself to learn a lot about histamines because I just see how much it affects the gut. And I see how much it helps my patients when we start addressing their histamine symptoms, where they're like, Yeah, for the first time in years, my stool is solid. For the first time in years, I don't have headaches and migraines and horrible bloat and pain every
Mhm.
time I'm on my period. Because similar bacteria that is found in endometriosis and pelvic inflammatory conditions are
Mhm.
histamine producers. So they get all that histamine in their uterus. And then it puts people in a vicious cycle because they have such painful periods. They take NSAIDs to help with the pain, and that worsens their histamine symptoms.
Yeah.
So this is something really near and dear to my heart. It's something really important. So hopefully you connect with a care team who also can help you out with this. So thank you all for tuning in. We know this was a big topic. We hope it wasn't too much. If it was, and you want us to break it down even further, let us know. But we are happy to continue to talk about histamines because more people need to.
And if you're not subscribed already to our YouTube, do that. This will be broken up into digestible chunks, whether that's on shorts or on video. So subscribe so you
Mhm.
don't miss those videos. That way you can learn more and revisit this amazing topic that can be life-changing because we've seen that in our patients. So again, thank you all. There'll be another Good Gut Live next month, as well as our dietitian talk coming up. So again, subscribe, turn on notifications.
And we can't
Don't
forget,
miss it.
next month we'll be releasing our Good Gut SIBO IBS program, and there's an entire
Yep.
leg of the program 100% dedicated to histamines. There are 7 low histamine, 100% plant based meal plans. We have entire educational modules on histamines, all these images, all this information, and more that we talked about today. It's all there. So if you're like, I need help with histamines, but Dahlia, you're booked until February, and I can't wait that long. Get on the wait list for our SIBO IBS program because it is chock full of histamine
Yeah.
information as well.
We're all about options. If you can't make an appointment with Dahlia, there's Rachel. If you can't get in with Dahlia or Rachel, maybe it's not the right time for you, we have our program. And so you're going to have tons of options, tons of meal plans to get really into the nitty gritty of this. So we're really excited. So
Yes.
thank you all so much. Again, we hope you had a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy
Happy
New
New
Year,
Year.
and
Yes.
we'll see you in the new year. All right. Remember to heal with each meal.
And feel with each meal.
Bye,
We'll see you
everybody.
soon.